There are such creatures in the world. They have been discovered by a few people, but have never been proven to exist. We collectively call this type of creature unidentified, mysterious animal. Unidentified, mysterious animal, abbreviated as UMA. 感谢观看. Across the vast lands of North America, immense forests intertwine with deep lakes. The legend of a mysterious horned humanoid monster has long become a part of the cultural gene here. Today, I will take everyone to learn about, during the mid-20th century, a public sensation that appeared in this land, claimed to be the missing link between humans and Neanderthals. A classic mystery in cryptozoology. The Minnesota Iceman. The Minnesota Iceman refers to a humanoid animal corpse, exhibited in the United States and Canada. During the 1960s and 1970s, it appeared as a complete male ape-like figure, tall in stature, with a flat face, covered entirely with dense dark brown hair, sealed inside a heavy block of ice. Now, based on the records left by people involved in the incident, in chronological order of events, I will share with you. The story goes like this. Frank Hansen was a member of the U.S. Air Force. After retiring in 1965, he made a living by organizing exhibitions of early farm machinery at carnivals and fairs. In 1967, his exhibits changed. A strange humanoid corpse began to enter the public eye. At a parking lot fair, Hansen brought this frozen body to various crowded areas and profited by selling tickets to view it. In early December 1968, an American herpetologist, Terry Cullen, at a Chicago International Livestock Exposition, saw the corpse. Like other curious people, he paid 35 cents just to get close to the glass coffin and observe, up close, this ancient human frozen in ice. It was a tall and burly humanoid monster. Its whole body was covered with about 3-inch long black hair. Its facial features were between humans and apes, with a flat nose, deep eye sockets, and a protruding lower jaw. On December 12, 1968, Professor Cullen reported this strange finding to American cryptozoologist Ivan Sanderson. Coincidentally, another cryptozoologist, Bernard Heuvelmans, was also working in the same area. So, on the 14th of that month, the two scholars went to Rolling Stone, Winona County, Minnesota, to Frank Hansen's place. And from the 16th to the 18th of that month, they conducted a detailed examination of the specimen. And without comparison, each wrote separate research reports. In May 1969, an article on the missing link appeared in the American Argosy magazine. The report, written by Professor Sanderson, described in detail the process from news to preliminary conclusions that he drew. I will briefly summarize his description of the body in the article. They nicknamed the corpse Bozo. It was a robust human, about 6 feet tall, except for the soles of the feet, the palms and the face. His whole body was covered with thick, coarse hair, between 2 and 4 inches long. Both his hands and feet had nails like humans. His neck was very short. The muscles on the sides of his head formed a huge triangular structure, extending to his broad shoulders. His torso was sturdy, narrowing toward the hips. His arms were longer than humans. The most striking and impressive feature was his pair of large, slightly flat hands. Though proportionally human-like, his thumbs were unusually long and slender, almost level with the last joint of the index finger. The toes are rather large. The width exceeds 10 inches. The little toe is almost as big as the others. The big toe is like that of a human, aligned with the next toe, and covered with many downward curving hairs. That looks stiff. Professor Sanderson observed the distribution of the patient's hair very carefully. It was not randomly scattered, but followed a natural growth pattern. as if obeying some primitive physiological law, except for the palms and soles of the feet, which need flexibility, and the key areas exposed to friction. The rest of the hair distribution was actually very similar to the primitive state of human hair. Ancient humans, to adapt to the environment, gradually lost their hair, retaining only on the head, armpits and other specific areas, which allowed heat dissipation while protecting vital parts. The patient's hair distribution seemed like an imitation of this evolutionary trace. However, modern human hair patterns are very different from primitive times. Aside from natural differences in hair density, more people face the problem of hair loss. Nowadays, many people begin to experience receding hairlines at a young age, thinning hair at the crown, and widening hair partings. The underlying reason is closely related to and genetic factors play a major role. If baldness runs in the family, the probability of carrying the related genes is higher. These people's hair follicles are more sensitive to androgens. When dihydrotestosterone levels rise, they continuously attack the sensitive follicles, causing them to gradually shrink, shortening the hair growth cycle. Originally, thick hair becomes thin and fragile, eventually leading to increasingly sparse hair, or even hair loss. For this kind of hair loss caused by the combined effect of androgens and genetics, there are in fact some professional guidelines that recommend responses. For example, 5% minoxidil is often discussed. It is listed as a grade A recommendation for stimulating follicle activity and prolonging the growth phase. But the problem is, topical minoxidil often makes the scalp oily and hard to keep using, until researchers discovered the uniqueness of 5% in foam form. Its ultra-thin technology allows ingredients to penetrate deep into follicles more quickly, causing human, miniaturized hair follicles to gradually reverse into intermediate follicles, growing more healthy, strong hair. More importantly, it doesn't feel greasy, even in hot summers. The patient's 2 eyeballs protruded from their sockets. Blood spread widely beneath the ice. Only one could be seen, faintly visible under the ice layer, making the face look extremely ghastly. His mouth and nose did not protrude like an ape's. The nose was broad and deeply indented. The lips were not inverted. One side of the mouth slightly opened, revealing 2 small teeth, which should be the upper right premolars and molars. Around the mouth and below the cheeks, some wrinkles were clearly visible. From a spot on the container's insulation layer came a foul, rotting stench. Professor Sanderson stated. With just one look, they could be certain this was a real specimen, not a fake model. But strangely, about the origin of this corpse, Frank Hansen gave several different accounts. One version said that this specimen was originally found by a Russian seal hunting vessel in the waters of eastern Siberia, inside a 6,000-pound block of ice, which they hauled aboard and placed in the hold. Later, when the ship entered a Chinese port, it was seized by authorities. After several transfers, it was eventually rediscovered in Hong Kong, then purchased by a wealthy man living on the West Coast, and transported back to the United States, and rented it to Hansen for commercial exhibition, because Hansen kept emphasizing that this specimen did not belong to him. He was only a custodian. The second version says it was first discovered by a Japanese whaling company near the coast of the Kamchatka Peninsula, and was later brought back to Japan and sold to an exporter in Hong Kong, later purchased by a wealthy man and brought to the US. February 1969. Professor Heuvelmann's paper was published in the Bulletin of the Royal Institute of Natural Sciences of Belgium. Professor Sanderson's report came earlier. Their depictions of the creature's image showed almost no differences, except in some details of completeness in the records. For example, Professor Heuvelmann's wrote that near the specimen's left foot, there was the distinctive odor of a decaying corpse. Without a doubt, this area was lacking in beeswax. Upon close inspection, it was found that the 5th toe of the right foot, the area closest to the eye surface, showed a suspicious grey color. Hansen stated that he did indeed notice that this toe was gradually decaying and this hairy man had multiple injuries, a fractured elbow, and severe head damage. According to Hansen, the entire occipital part of the protruding skull was crushed, or missing brain matter flowed out from it. In the middle of the chest, there was a small black area visible. Most likely, another wound. With fractured ribs and missing eyeballs. All of this suggested that the creature may have been shot several times head-on with a large caliber firearm. At that time, it may have been trying to shield itself with its forearms. The second bullet struck its right eye and shattered it, causing the other eye to dislodge and leaving a large cavity in the back of the skull, resulting in immediate death. As for how long the specimen had been frozen, Heuvelmans once consulted a geologist's opinion, who believed that the specimen was only a few years old and had been artificially frozen for preservation. In this article, Professor Heuvelmans confirmed that the Minnesota Iceman was a new species of the genus Homo, which he named Homo pongoides, a species similar to Neanderthals, or rather, something between apes and modern humans. However, in the view of many zoologists, Heuvelmans' article made a serious scientific mistake. He named a species that had not been confirmed to exist in nature. At that time, such a creature was unlikely to exist. But in the 1970s, he changed his view and believed it should belong to a type of Neanderthal. In the same month, Professor Sanderson contacted the project director of the Smithsonian Institution, the British primatologist John Russell Napier, who used the institution's connections to involve government agencies in the investigation. Soon, Hansen received word from the National Museum that they were about to step into the matter, apparently for the true owner of the specimen. This was unbearable, so he had Hansen return the body. Since March 1969, the topic of the Iceman frequently appeared in newspapers. In addition, at that time, Professor Sanderson mentioned the Iceman incident while hosting a TV program, which made the media worldwide pay attention to this mysterious body. Everyone wanted to know whether it was real or not. Scholars' discussions and research never stopped. On the 13th of that month, Hansen rejected the Smithsonian's request to examine the body and stated that the original specimen had been taken away by its owner. No longer carried out evictions. In the next quarter, artificial models would replace the exhibits. Then Hansen faded from public view, taking the specimen with him. About a month later, he reappeared with what he claimed was the genuine model and exhibited it at the fair. Until July 1970, an article written by Frank Hansen himself was published in America's McFadden's Saga magazine with the title, "I Killed the White-Faced Ape Man." In the article, he gave a detailed account of the origin of the specimen and mentioned that he did not request any form of payment from Saga magazine. The article was intended to dispel people's many speculations about the story and the intentions behind it. However, the content of this article was completely different from his earlier statements. Since the text was quite long here, I'll give a rough summary. In 1960, Frank Hansen, then an Air Force officer, was stationed in Duluth, northeastern Minnesota. During that year's deer hunting season, he joined a hunting trip in a resort village on the shores of Whiteface Reservoir. A little after 6 a.m. that morning, he successfully shot a doe on a hillside. But before he could fire a second shot, the deer ran into the bushes. On the frozen grass, a clear blood trail was left behind. He followed the trail to the swamp nearby and heard the deer's dying cry. But just as he cautiously walked toward the source of the sound, he suddenly froze in terror. In the middle of a small clearing, 3 furry, bear-like creatures were tearing at the deer's entrails, drinking its blood. 2 of them were kneeling on the ground, while another was only about 10 feet away from Hansen. It was a male creature resembling a human. The horrifying scene overwhelmed Hansen's mind. Suddenly, the male beast leapt up from its crouching position, raising its arms above its head and letting out a strange shriek as it charged toward Hansen. In a panic, he pulled the trigger repeatedly without aiming. He didn't remember what happened afterward, only that blood gushed from the creature's face, spraying outward. Later, he managed to escape and was rescued by other hunters. Fearing it would affect his military career, and his post-service life. He did not report the incident immediately, until a month later, when he returned with hunting dogs. He found in the snow the body of the slain creature and realized everything that happened that day was real. It was a furry monster, which actually reassured him, because he could be certain that he hadn't killed a real human being. He and his wife transported the body home and hid it in the basement freezer, preserved in ice water, to prevent decay and odor. In 1961, when moving to a farm, he personally transferred the freezer and falsely claimed it contained frozen meat. Until 1966, after retiring, he entered the exhibition business and remembered again the frozen, hairy creature resembling a prehistoric human. But after consulting a lawyer, Hansen was told that if the creature was judged to be human, he could very likely be charged with murder. To avoid risk, he hired Hollywood makeup artists to create a highly realistic replica, with its scars and fur restored. And in 1967, under the name Unknown Creature of Whiteface Reservoir, he toured it in exhibitions, always claiming it was a work of art. By 1968, since no legal issues had arisen, he secretly turned off the refrigeration system and replaced the exhibit with a real corpse. But as Professor Heuvelmann's article caused a sensation, the questions resurfaced again: who shot him? And whether there was any criminal activity. These issues flooded back into his life. He also chose to freeze the model again. At the end of this chapter, Frank Hansen's statement was expressed like this: because I did not take an oath, if necessary, I will deny all the literal content. But unless my special conditions are met, no one can fully determine the truth. Meanwhile, I will continue to display a specimen publicly admitted to be fake, and leave the final judgment to the audience. If someone smells a rotting odor from a corner of the coffin, it's just imagination, because the glass has been resealed. However, John Napier of the Smithsonian did not buy into this. In his 1974 publication, Bigfoot, the Yeti and Sasquatch in Myth and Reality, he discussed the Iceman case. What I found here was the second edition of this book, published in 1976. So the information should be more complete. In the book, Napier's main point was that the Iceman was a complete hoax. From the beginning, he expressed extreme skepticism about its anatomy. He compared Sanderson's on-site sketches with Heuvelmann's photographs, confirming their relative accuracy. But the anatomical features of this creature, such as its hands and feet, finger proportions, digit ratios, etc., all suggested that this being was neither adapted for climbing with 4 limbs, nor for upright walking like a human. He also conducted an offline investigation with his colleague, George Berkeley. They successfully found a company on the West Coast, which claimed that in April 1967, Hansen had created the Iceman model, using latex and hair. This confirmed Napier's hypothesis. He consistently held the view that there was only one Iceman. According to him, Hansen's so-called replicas were nothing more than thawing the original, then refreezing it in new poses and expressions. He persuaded the Smithsonian at the time to withdraw from the investigation as quickly as possible. But nevertheless, Hansen later added to his display board the phrase "investigated by the FBI" as a publicity stunt. Napier believed that the Iceman's identity was a matter of forensic science, not biology. The Iceman case was, in his view, a turning point in the commercialization of the Bigfoot legend, because a creature with such features was, statistically, impossible to exist, and the two scholars became the deceived party. In fact, Professor Sanderson leaned toward believing there were 2 specimens. He once stated that the specimen Napier studied was noticeably different from the version he first saw. For example, the mouth was closed, and the teeth looked different. This led him to believe that there might have been more than one specimen. But it is also possible that because the model was thawed each year and refrozen again, its posture and appearance underwent subtle changes. This, in turn, made the experts feel that it was not the same Iceman. At the end of the 1970s, Hansen suddenly retired, withdrew from public life, and disappeared. No one knew where he went. Soon after, the Iceman display also vanished from the fairgrounds. After Hansen's disappearance, the trail of the Iceman was lost. But the story did not end there. In 2013, Steve Busty, owner of the Austin Museum of the Weird in Texas, unexpectedly acquired an Iceman model. He claimed that this was Hansen's original Iceman. The news once again attracted attention. Some experts pointed out that this version looked different from the descriptions in Sanderson and Heuvelmann's reports. For example, the face and body proportions were not exactly the same. Therefore, many believe that the one preserved in the museum is actually just a replica. Even so, this exhibit still became a local attraction, drawing many curious visitors. But in academic circles, the controversy never ended. Was Hansen's Iceman a real unknown creature, or merely an elaborate hoax? If it was fake, why did Hansen work so hard to create such an elaborate model, even fooling scientists? And if it was real, why did it suddenly disappear? Why didn't the government or research institutions step in to preserve such a specimen? This has left endless mysteries and speculation. The Iceman has since become one of the most famous legends in the history of cryptozoology. To this day, many cryptozoology enthusiasts are still searching for Hansen's original Iceman. Some speculate that it may have been secretly bought by a private collector. Others believe the government intervened and took it away for confidential research. There are even more imaginative theories, such as Hansen being silenced because he discovered something extraordinary. But these remain only speculation. If the Iceman was truly a carefully crafted fake, then Hansen was indeed a genius hoaxer. If it was real, then it was a major discovery that was lost forever. Regardless of the truth, this incident reminds us that human beings' curiosity about the unknown has always driven exploration, and the Iceman became a story that blurred the line between science and legend. Even today, people still mention it, whether as a bizarre tale of the carnival era, or as an unsolved mystery in biology. The Iceman continues to fascinate, and perhaps that is its greatest value. Not just whether it was real or fake, but the way it provoked people to think about the mysteries of nature. As long as curiosity exists, legends like the Iceman will never die. Instead, they will continue to be passed down, appearing in books, documentaries, and even in online debates. Some researchers hope that one day, new evidence about the Iceman will emerge. Perhaps a hidden photograph, or a forgotten witness testimony. Even a tiny clue could reignite the mystery after so many years. But, until then, the Iceman will remain a shadowy legend. A tale whispered among cryptid fans, and a warning for science about the importance of evidence. Without solid proof, truth can vanish. Like mist on a winter morning, the Iceman may be gone, but the curiosity it sparked still lingers in people's hearts. And perhaps that curiosity itself is the true legacy of the Iceman, a reminder that the unknown is always waiting for us to explore. Stories like this blur the line between fact and imagination. They inspire new generations to keep seeking the truth. And even if the Iceman never reappears, its story will live on forever. Because legends, once told, never truly disappear. It still remains a mystery. Perhaps the rest can only be proven with time. All right, in the end, it's still the same saying. The unknown will always be greater than the known. That is also the charm of UMA. That's all for today's video. Thank you for watching.